Good evening, everyone. It's Jennifer O'Connell here, Executive Director of Down Syndrome Network, and I have my sign in the back, Saddle Up for Down Syndrome. So if you haven't signed up for our annual walk at ASU Homecoming, it is November 15th this year. So check our website out and sign up. I am very pleased to say that we have Cynthia back with us. This is our third evening, third month in a row that Cynthia has joined us. I'll let her introduce herself, and I'm recording so everyone can have this video later posted on the website. Thank you for
Awesome.
joining us.
I am so excited to be here, you guys. This is my favorite subject. It is the Disabled Adult Child Program, and it's a program that most people don't know about. And when I discovered it, I just did a deep dive, and I love explaining it to people. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm a mom of a 27-year-old son with autism. He was a DDD All-Tex member until he was 11. I have 24 years of experience helping families navigate access and All-Tex, and I served on the governor's advisory committee for autism spectrum disorder for 7 years. I helped pass the autism insurance legislation. I'm currently the advocacy director for Autism Society, and I'm the vice chair for District West IOC. And we basically we like look over the group homes under DDD and try to advocate for those members. And then my real job is that I'm a licensed health and life insurance agent, and I help people with Marketplace and Medicare. And so that's who I am, but I'm just excited to talk about this program. So we're going to talk about Social Security because that's going to kind of lead us into the Disabled Adult Child Program. We're going to talk about Social Security disability, access, all tax, Medicare, and all your different choices. So let's just get into it. I'm going to urge families to apply for SSI for their child when they turn 18. Even if you think your child might work part-time, um, it's really important to apply for this program because if you do it at 22 or sooner, it's protective in a variety of ways, which we're going to talk about um, further on. So SSI, that's Supplemental Security Insurance, it's needs-based and it's financed by the general fund. And it's designed to help people who are blind or disabled and also low income. And it provides cash for basic needs. It's not earned. You don't need work credits or anything like that. And it's really an important program. One of the things it gets you is Medicaid when you apply for this and you're accepted by this program. And although many of us, our children and adults might have all tax, not everyone does. And getting access to access is super helpful, and we'll talk more about that. So, when you're going to apply for Social Security, you're going to want to make sure you have all the information in front of you. So, you're going to need Social Security number, birth certificate, proof of citizenship. You're going to want all the medical records that are going to help you advocate for the disability. What you want to make sure you don't do is pick like 8 different disabilities. You want to pick the one that's the most important. So either Down syndrome, autism, like something. But if you pick too many and lose focus, it actually doesn't work to your advantage. I think the best thing to do is have a binder with all the different records that is going to help you make this argument. You're also going to need financial information, proof of income and resources, and then living arrangements. So you're going to go online and you're going to apply, and you're actually applying for SSI and SSDI at the same time. Your adult child is not going to qualify for SSDI if they're applying at 18 because they do not have a work history. But the government is very persnickety. They want you to apply for any program that you might qualify for. So when you apply, you'll get denied pretty quickly on the SSDI portion of it, but the SSI portion can still being processed. It's taking 6 months to a year for that process to start. And so it's a lengthy process. So starting right at 18 is important. You want to make sure you have all your medical records. You want to make sure that you're keeping a journal of all the daily challenges. And this is really important because as parents, we see our children as beautiful gifts, and it's always the glass half full, right? We have our rose-colored glasses on. But when we're advocating for a state or federal program, we have to be very realistic and honest about what they can and can't do. You always want real life situations that prove the need and that their daily tasks are difficult. You definitely want a parent to be there for the interview. You want to stay organized. So, really, I encourage a binder with everything that you want Social Security to have. And then you can give that to them, but they will sometimes want it from the doctor or whoever the provider is. So you're going to want to make sure that the provider is giving it to Social Security, and you're going to want to make sure that Social Security actually gets it. Lots of times when people are denied, it's because they didn't receive all the records that they needed. If you do get denied, I encourage you to use an attorney, and there's specific attorneys that do disability. To be eligible for SSI, it's based on resources and income. So the resources have to be 2000 or under, and resources include cash, land, stocks, bonds, 401k, everything. You can own a home, you can own a car, I think, but you really want to make sure that you're very strict. So if you have extra money laying around, that's going to be a problem. So you might want to think about an ABLE account. That is a place where you can put money that will not interfere with state or federal benefits. You also really want to make sure that you're seeing an elder law attorney and that you have a special needs trust. And I encourage people to see Emily Kyle, Emily Taylor, or Bivens. All of those people are experts in this. You don't want to use somebody who isn't an expert because if it's written incorrectly, it could eventually lead to them losing the services that are so valuable. You might want to consider guardianship. There are different ways to do that. You can do limited guardianship, full guardianship, or supportive decision making. Autism Society has a class on transition to adulthood that goes into detail on these, and it applies to anybody in the DDD All Tech system, and I would encourage you to attend. So let's say you have applied and you are approved for SSI. You need to make sure that you're charging your child rent. If you do not, Social Security will cut 1/3 of what they would get. And so you don't want that to happen. So you can do rent fair share, where you divide everything by the number of people, or a tenant rate. You have to keep records, you have to file a daily report, and they will do reviews, and it can be any time between 1 and 6 years. This year, the amount of money you would get per month is $967. So if your adult child is over the age of 18, they were disabled before 22, they're on SSI for their disability, when one of their parents is retired, disabled, or passes away, and the parent has enough work credits, and the individual isn't married, they qualify for the DAC program. And this is super important because the DAC program allows the loved one to qualify on the retiree's work record. So if I'm getting 967, but then my dad retires and his income, his Social Security retirement is 4,000, then I might now get 2,000 instead of 967. You can get up to half of the parent's full work record, but it depends on the structure of your household. If you have more than one person, claiming on a parent's work record, the number might be different. A disability payment to a DAC will not decrease the parent's retirement benefit. So just because your adult child's claiming on your record, it does not impact you in any way. When both parents pass away, the disabled adult child will get 75% of the parent's full benefit. And that'll be the parent that has the highest benefit. So this is really important for state planning. So one of the reasons I want to encourage everybody to apply for SSI early is because of the pickle rule. So the pickle rule is a federal law that protects people from losing SSI eligibility and their automatic Medicaid after their SS benefits increase due to cost of living increases or because you're now qualifying on a parent's work record. So I've had 2 cases in the last few months where the family didn't apply for SSI because they just weren't sure if their child was going to work, what was going to happen. And the child did work a little bit, and then they ended up qualifying for SSDI on their own work record. Well, because they weren't on SSI, they weren't really considered a DAC. And because they went straight to SSDI, their income wasn't protected by the pickle rule. So this is a super important thing. It's also very important to know because Access sometimes makes mistakes around the pickle rule. So I have attorneys refer 1 or 2 people a year to me because they've lost their Medicaid and the pickle rule applies. I do have contacts within Access and I help rectify that situation. So the pickle rule's super important. Okay, so if your child has SSI, can they get SSDI at the same time? And the answer is yes, because the government never wants you to have less than $967. So if your SSDI is 400, then they're going to make up the rest with SSI. So you can qualify for both. However, let's say your SSI was 967, but you just qualified for SSDI on your parents' work record, and the SSDI is 2000. You no longer will get SSI because your SSDI is above that. So just remember, the government never wants somebody to live below whatever that bottom standard is. And for this year, it's 967. Okay. And then it's super important to remember that you should not lose your Medicaid based on cost of living increases because the pickle rule protects you. So, can you get married? Only if you marry another disabled adult child. So this is really important because if you get married and you marry someone who isn't disabled, you will lose this benefit and you will never get it back. I ran into a family a few years ago who Social Security told the disabled adult child that they could get married, and they did, and they lost their benefits. And even if you get it annulled, you never get those benefits back. So the only way they can get married is to marry someone who's also a disabled adult child. Now, I'm not telling them not to get married, but it's a very important family decision, and you really have to do the cost benefit analysis. So just remember that. Okay. Can you work part-time? Well, what we're finding is a lot of our individuals are working part-time. So if they're working part-time, then they can actually qualify for SSDI on their own work record. So if they earned over 3 years, $10,000 and $10,860, that would equal 6 work credits, and then they could qualify on their own work record for SSDI. And we're going to go over why that's so important. So again, we talked about you can have concurrent benefits. So you can have SSI and SSDI, but it's based on the amounts of money, right? So I think I explained. So if you're making 2,000 now with SSDI, you're not going to get SSI. But if you're making 400 with SSDI, you're going to continue to get SSI, and you'll get paid 2 different times. If your SSDI amount is high enough, like I said, your SSI is just going to disappear because your SSDI is so much. The big deal is that once you're on SSDI for 24 months, on the 25th month, you will qualify for Medicare. And the thing is, nobody tells you that. So, how you find out is that a Medicare card shows up, and you're like, why do we have a Medicare card? What am I doing with the Medicare card? So, it's just something that most people don't know about and aren't talking about, and it's super important. So let's talk about healthcare really briefly. So you may be on Access or you may be on All-Tax. They're a little bit different. So when we talk about Medicaid, Access is like the umbrella, and they have 3 programs. So under Medicaid, there's Access for Low Income, there's Access for EPD, so that would be elderly or physically disabled, or sorry, All-Tax EPD, and then All-Tax DDD. So that would be for anyone developmentally disabled. So umbrella, 3 different programs. Regular access covers medical, so we're talking doctors, hospitals, specialists, surgeries, emergency, behavioral health, immunizations, medicine, all the regular medical coverage that you would think of. All-Tax, that's Arizona long-term care. And that covers like nursing home, day treatment, attendant care, home and community services, homemaking, assisted living, case management, group supported employment, habilitation, $1,000 of dental after 20, because when you're 21, you no longer qualify for dental when you're on just regular access. And when you're on All-Tax, your dental goes down to $1,000 as soon as you turn 21. So Arizona long-term care, you're saying your child's in danger or your adult child's in danger of being institutionalized. You get all these extra benefits. So I don't know if you guys heard, but EPD, elderly physically disabled, that program went out to bid. It had an RFP, and there's been quite a lot of controversy because 2 carriers won that contract. There was a big lawsuit. There was lots of disagreements, a settlement agreement, another lawsuit. And where we're at right now is for EPD, Mercy Care, Banner, and United Healthcare have that contract and will have it for 3 more years. So if you have EPD, your choice of health plan is Banner, Mercy Care, or United. If you have All-Tax DDD, right now, your choice is United and Mercy Care. But these contracts go out to bid every few years, and it's important to stay kind of involved and paying attention. Okay. EPSDT, early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. And this is part of Medicaid law at the federal level that makes Medicaid kind of be the gold standard really for medical necessity. And what it says specifically is if you can prove a service will ameliorate your child's condition, whether it's a covered benefit or not, the state has to pay for it. And so some things that have happened. So Down syndrome and CP families fought for in 17 states to get hyperbaric chamber covered. That is not a service that's covered here because nobody's sued for it, but it is a service in many states, 17, where you can use that as a treatment. Why EPD, why early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment, EPSDT, is so important is as soon as you turn 21, that no longer applies. The reason Congress included that as part of the federal rules is they didn't want something to be considered experimental, find out 20 years later that it was like the best treatment, and we have a whole generation of children that are now adults that did not get the treatment that they needed and deserved. So when you're getting your home and community services, you are getting those from the Division of Developmental Disabilities. And that's like respite, rehabilitation, attendant care. When we're talking about your regular medical and behavioral health, you're getting that from your health plan, so Mercy Care or United. Speech and OT come from the DDD qualified network, even when you're over 21. PT, after you, excuse me, after you turn 21, comes from the health plan. Behavioral health comes from the health plan. DDD has behavioral health advocates within the OFIT department that can help. My recommendation is to call the DDD United Healthcare or Mercy Care liaison if you need help getting a service, if you need help with a prescription drug issue, if you need help finding behavioral health resources. Once you qualify for Medicare, you can no longer get speech therapy by an assistant, and it must be a speech path. And that's because that's what Medicare says. There's been lots of controversy about this over the last few months. DDD implemented a TPL rule that all of a sudden meant that the members that had All-Tax, DDD, and Medicare, all of their services were not being paid for, and speech was one of the biggest ones. I was contacted by SpeechPass and speech agencies, and I worked with other advocates to meet with DDD and change that and get those services back. But it was very frustrating for a lot of members. Believe it or not, there's 5,000 DDD All-Text members that also have Medicare. And that's important because Medicare is the payer first. So Medicaid is always the payer of last resort. Medicare, it will be the first payer. So we want people on Medicare because the federal government will pay a majority of the cost for that member, and it saves money for the state to use that money in other places. Dental. So access when you're 20 and under, you have dental. But once you turn 21, the dental changes. So for All-Tex EPD and DDD, you get $1,000 covered dental, comprehensive dental, and $1,000 of emergency dental, which is truly emergency dental. For those with access over the age of 21 or over, they only get $1,000 for emergency dental. Now, I know that seems horrible, and it is. But I worked with a whole committee of dentists and others, and we fought so hard to get dental for adults. There really wasn't any. So although this is not great, it's still better than what we had in the past. Okay, so you're on SSDI and all of a sudden the Medicare card shows up. Let's talk about what that means. We're going to go over what Medicare is. So Medicare has parts A and B. So part A is hospital. So that's a hospital room, intensive care, skilled nursing, hospice, operating room services, habilitation, home health, and some Part B drugs. Part B is your medical. That's your doctor, your specialist, your wellness visit, your preventative care, your outpatient mental health, labs, radiology, durable medical equipment, ambulance, OT, PT, speech, surgeons, ER. So you have A and B. What's really important to know is A is not going to have a premium. B does have a premium. This year, right now, the standard premium is $185. A lot of people will cancel their adult child's Medicare because they're like, $185, we can't afford that. What's really important to know is the Part B premium is paid for by Access or Altex. So the member should not be paying that premium. Now, sometimes it takes 90 days for Social Security and Access to talk to each other and make that happen. And sometimes you have to call and make it happen because things just fall through they just don't happen. I don't know why, but it's really important to know this. So if you're on SSI or SSDI and you have DDD all tax, or you're on Access and you're low income, Part B is something that's paid for by the Medicare Savings Program, and that's paid by Access or all tax. So you get a Medicare card. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to tell you what the state's going to do. The state's just going to auto enroll you in a plan, and they're not going to care who your doctors are, who the medications are, what the needs are, and you do not want that. You want somebody to help you see what your choices are. So choice one is a DSNP, and it's a Medicare Advantage plan, and they're created for people who have Medicaid and Medicare, and they have all sorts of enhanced benefits. And they do this because they believe that when you have coordination of care, it leads to better outcomes. So if your child's on DDD All Tax, you would have the choice of the Mercy Care or United Dual Plan. If your loved one is on an Access plan, they would actually have a few more choices than that. But what's really important about the dual plans is the network isn't always the same. There's about 10 or 15% of providers that'll take the Medicaid portion, but not the dual portion. So you want somebody to check the networks, make sure all the doctors are in the network and the prescriptions are in the network, and make sure it's actually a good plan. Let's say they're not. Let's say your loved one was on an employer plan, and so they have some doctors that don't take Medicaid. You can choose a Medicare Advantage plan, and some families do. They'll choose a PPO or another HMO that has a wider network, and they still have extra benefits, but not as good as the dual benefits. But it allows you to choose doctors that maybe don't take Access. So I have several clients who picked a different kind of Medicare Advantage plan because their favorite doctor didn't take Medicaid, and it allows them to do that. And I'm an expert in helping people navigate that whole thing. The other choice is you can have Access and Medicare and a prescription drug plan. So Medicare would be primary, Access would be secondary, and then the Part D would pay for prescription drugs. Now, you don't get hearing or dental or vision or gym membership or any of the extra stuff. You don't get the grocery card or any of those things. Why would you choose this instead of a Medicare Advantage plan or a dual Medicare Advantage plan? You would choose it because of network. So let's say, I'll give you an example of a client of mine. He is going to need a transplant, and that transplant is going to take place at Mayo. And Mayo does not take Medicare Advantage plans, does not take dual plans, and in general does not take Access, but they do for transplants. So you would not want to be on a Medicare Advantage plan if you were going to Mayo for transplant. That is something you wouldn't do. So you might have your child on an employer plan, and then maybe you have these layered on it. And that might be because of network. So It's very complicated on what you're going to choose and why you're going to choose it. And what's really important is understanding it's all about the doctors, all about the networks, and all about the benefits. So some people will say to me, you know what, that doctor's not important, but the dental is super important. Or others will say the doctor's the most important. I don't care about extra benefits at all. So it's very individualized, and you need somebody who's an expert to look at everything, explain all of your choices, tell you the pros and cons, and why you want to do it. If you are currently using Access, I want to encourage you all to go to Access's website and look up Access registered providers. One of the things that's really important to know is that even if a doctor doesn't take your Access plan, if they're contracted with Access, they cannot balance bill you. Now, there are a few exceptions about this, but it's you really want to be an expert. I teach a class on third-party billing and kind of how to know how to navigate that. But in general, I encourage you to always make sure you're checking that all your providers are Access registered or not. If they're not Access registered, they can balance bill you. But if they are Access registered, then in general, they really can't. So who pays first? Medicare pays first. Medicaid is always the payer of last resort. You have an employer plan, you have Medicare, and you have Medicaid. Who pays first? If your employer has over 100 employees, the group plan pays first, Medicare pays second, Medicaid pays last. If the employer has less than 100 employees, Medicare pays first, group plan pays second, Medicaid pays last. If you're on an employer plan and it's less than 20 employees, then you absolutely have to have the member keep their Medicare, because if they don't have the Medicare, the employer plan in general will not pay. Can you have a Medicare Advantage plan and an employer plan? You can, depending on how many employees and how it's going to work. It can be a little bit complicated, but sometimes it's worth it for the extra benefits. And in general, you're going to retire, and at some point, you're going to want your adult to transition to their own insurance and be used to using that insurance, and making sure that transition happens in a controlled way. So just suddenly they don't lose the doctors that you think are really important. Okay. And what do I do? I help you understand all of your options. I help you make a decision. I do all the research for you. I tell you the pros and cons about the carriers. I advocate for my clients inside the plans. I answer questions. I provide resources. And I do things like, just recently, a client just lost their Medicaid. Well, they lost it because they're on SSDI and they got a part-time job. They didn't understand that that extra income was going to take away their benefits. And so we talked about what their choices were, and their choice was to do the Freedom to Work program to get their Medicaid back. So I try to always find a solution to whatever comes up, and it can get complicated. And then that's who I am. I help people with insurance. That's my real job. But I think in general, I spend a great deal of my time advocating for families with DDD, with Medicaid, um, and educating families on what is available and what's so important. I'm going to be doing something for the Arizona Autism Coalition on some of these lesser known services like Freedom to Work, Ticket to Work, um, some of the stuff and how it impacts how much work you can do, and making sure that you're actually keeping your Medicaid, because that's super important. And I'd love to open it up to questions. I know I went really quickly and it's a lot of information, and I just welcome anybody who has any questions. Let me know.
And
No
we'll
one?
put something in the chat. I mean, this is the
Yep.
time to have you feel like if anybody has a question, they should take
Yeah,
advantage of this time.
please do, because it's a lot of information and I know it can be kind of overwhelming and confusing.
I know the more I have, get to see you speak and listen to this, it's like I'm catching on little by little.
Well, even me too, like, I didn't in the beginning know about freedom to work. And what made me learn about freedom to work is that I had a couple clients all of a sudden lose their insurance, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And then, I contacted other people and I did other research, and um, so I'm always learning too. I have
Yeah,
a client right now that just lost his Medicaid, which meant he was going to lose his housing, his day
Oh, wow.
program, his everything. And the way they found me is a lawyer who I've never even heard of, told them about me. And we have him enrolled in a Medicare plan. He's applying to Freedom to Work, and we have the H2O program that's going to protect his housing. And his benefits are going to stay stable, which is
Good.
really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, Debbie
And
just says, will your info be available if we have questions in the future? Um, Definitely,
yeah,
you can find Cynthia online, and we have her contact information. We'll be posting this video up. So if you want to pause something or look back or slow it down, or what did she say again?
right.
We'll have it posted on our DS Network website under our Level Up webinar series. And we'll have Cynthia's information there. And she will be at our walk and our holiday party. So if you plan on being at either one of those events, you can meet her in person and ask questions. All
Yes,
right.
please do, because this really is my life's work, really. Um, and the reason that I got so passionate about the DAC program is there's so many people who don't have dental, and or
Mhm,
their dental isn't enough, and don't and they're living on almost no money, and there's so many extra benefits.
mhm.
But when you get those extra benefits, you sometimes give things up too.
Right.
And what's frustrating is the system doesn't care about any of that. They just enroll you in something with no regard to what the needs actually are.
Hmm.
And so that's why families have to be educated and make sure that they don't just get auto enrolled in something. It's a choice, and you have to make a good choice for your individual, and everybody has different needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, education, informed decisions are
Yes.
very important in our world.
Yeah, they
Um,
are.
all right. Well, going once, going twice, if no one else, and you're welcome to unmute yourself, of course, and just ask the question or use the chat. But if you don't have anything else, I just want to thank you so much. Debbie says the same thing. Thank you for all you do. And we're so grateful to have you, love and all your love and support and dedication for the local Down syndrome community. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for being here. And please always feel like just always reach out. I'm happy to help.
Okay, perfect. Take care. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.